Hi guys, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed all that flip-o-rama. I think it was funny. Well, today, on this chapter, we're gonna read all until the finale. Here we go. Chapter 22, the 22nd chapter. Professor Poopypants had been defeated, and everyone in the school cheered. Hooray! Wildly. They were still small, but at least they got their old names back. I'm sure glad I don't have a silly name anymore, said Miss Ribble. Me too, said Mr. Recht. Hooray! Cried George. Let's give old Captain Underpants a big hand. Who has a big hand? I'll give you a minute to guess. Enough thinking. Let's continue. The page. Harold was not amused. Oops, said George. Sorry. That's okay, said Harold. Just give me that invention thing so I can zap us back to normal. Tap, tap, tap. Harold held the Goosey Grove 4000 in his giant hand and zapped George and himself. That is every part of himself except his giant hand. I hope, Harold's hand got back to normal and themselves. Suddenly, George and Harold were back to their normal sizes again. Phew. Boy, said George, we sure have tested the limits of science today. Yep, said Harold, and the limits of our readers' willing suspension of disbelief. Yeah, stammered George. That too. George and Harold picked up their tiny school and carried back where it belonged. George got ready to zap the school with the Goosey Grove 4000. Harold prepared to zap Captain Underpants with the Shrinky Pig 2000. I sure hope this works, said George. Me too, said Harold. Chapter 23. To make a long story short, it did. Chapter 24. The chapter before the last chapter. George took Captain Underpants over to the bushes behind the school and ordered him to dress back to Mr. Krupp. Let's go, bub, said George. We haven't got all day. Then Harold had some fun with the garden hose. In no time at all. Wait a minute. Mr. Krupp was back to his old nasty self again. Soon, the cops showed up to arrest Professor Poopypants. There's one thing I don't understand, said George to the professor. Wouldn't it have been smarter to change your own name instead of forcing the rest of the world to change theirs? Gosh, said Professor Poopypants, I never thought of that. A few weeks later, George and Harold received a letter from the Pequot State Penitentiary. As you can see, I can't read like all scribble stuff like that. So it's pretty hard. But Professor Poopypants actually turned his name into his grandfather's name, Timpy Tinkletoesers. But actually, you know what? All of the other guys at the, prison laughed at his name too. You know why? Because Professor Poopypants' grandfather was born in New Switzerland. Chapter 25. The chapter after the chapter before the last chapter. Said George, I really learned something today. What's that? Asked Harold. I learned that it's not nice to make fun of people, said George. Wow, said Harold. I think this is the first time one of our stories ever had a moral. Probably the last time too, said George. Let's hope so, said Harold. See, they're laughing harder than usual. But George and Harold had forgotten all about their other moral they had learned along the way, which was don't ever, ever, ever hypnotize your principal, because if you do, your life can go from bad to worse. At the snap of a finger. Snap, snap. Yikes. Oh no! Screamed Harold. Here we go again, screamed George. Tra-la-la! The end. Well, guys, I hope you liked the story of Captain Underpants and the perilous plot of Professor Poopypants. Bye!